It is 6 o'clock. This is a meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission of the City of Laredo. Today is October the 30th of 2019. And the first order that we have is a roll call, please.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Erasmo Villarreal.
Present.
Jose Tellez.
Present.
Carlos Flores. George Peckelheimer.
Present.
Raúl Ugalde.
Present.
Johnny Narvaez.
Present.
Abraham Lugo.
Present.
Jose Luis Villarreal. Jorge Dominguez. For the record, Mr. Chairman, you do have quorum.
Thank you. I know that Mr. Dominguez is going to try to make the meeting, but he asked to be excused if he could make it. He had a 5 o'clock meeting that he had to finish up.
Make a motion to excuse all four of the three absent.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. The next item that we have is, can everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the next thing we have is the consideration of the approval of the minutes of September 19th and October the 17th.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the minutes of September 19th and October 17th.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. The next item, we do have some citizens' comments, but they're specific for one item, so we will hear it when that item comes up. The next item that we have is going to be item 6A. Item 6A is a preliminary consideration of the Lago del Valle right-of-way dedication plat. The intent is city right-of-way, and the proposed action is approved subject to the following comments from planning and from water and utilities and a notice of developer.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Edward Garza. I'm with Crane Engineering. I'm here on behalf of the developer. First of all, we agree with all comments, but I want to take this opportunity to give you some background about this project, if you would allow me to spend a few minutes, because this also impacts the next agenda item.
Okay.
So basically what we're doing here is the RMA, the City of Laredo, the Webb County Drainage District, and TxDOT have partnered up to finance and construct an arterial road from Concord Hills to Cuatro Vientos. And so in developing this, we can go here. And this all began because TxDOT was experiencing some level of service problems on Highway 359, and they were looking for alternative routes to try to reduce that congestion on 359. This map illustrates the arterial type roads of local collectors, 60-foot right-of-way and greater in this part of the city. The solid lines mean that the roads are already built, and the dotted lines represent what the future transportation plan of the city calls for, along with the master plans that are already on file. So this project that we're talking about tonight is this portion that's clouded in black. It's to connect Concord Hills Boulevard, which is an 80-foot right-of-way, major collector, with Los Presidentes Avenue, which is a 100-foot right-of-way arterial. And so what the plan here is to be able to provide a secondary form of access for this area, the Concord area, and allow them to access to Cuatro Vientos directly. It'll also provide first responders with an alternate access point for this area, which, as you know, a lot of these plats you've seen around recently, there's been a lot of development in this part of the city. But ultimately, the goal is to continue this plan and continue these arterial roads and ultimately tie into what's known as E.G. Ranch Road, which is the road directly across from the landfill. That's already a built-out major collector that provides access to an elementary school, a middle school, and a bus transportation facility. These are things that the RMA and the city are currently working on in planning, and tonight what we're doing is we're providing the right-of-way dedication portion within the Lago del Valle development for this project to occur. So the cross-section that we're proposing comes right out of the City of Laredo Viva Comprehensive Plan for an arterial section. It'll be a 4-lane road with a median or a left turn lane, 6-foot bike lanes on both sides, 6-foot sidewalks on both sides, landscaped areas, irrigated, et cetera, street lights, a typical standard City of Laredo Land Development Code type project. This will be a full construction in this particular project, and it'll be constructed through under a public bid situation. And so the schematic or the plan view is represented here, where we're looking tonight at this right-of-way dedication up to this point. And then your next item will be from here to Cuatro Vientos, which Howland Engineering is serving as the engineer of record on that. So we're working together, multiple landowners, public entities, engineers, to work on developing this arterial road. And this is what we're here for tonight, to receive preliminary approval.
I have one question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Eddie, what is the difference between, I mean, not the obvious difference, but why not make the sidewalk, like move the bikes off the street? That's just the way the city has decided, let's make bike lanes on the streets instead of making the sidewalks wider. I'm not for or against.
Currently, the current Viva plan does call for independent bike lanes and sidewalks. And so what we're representing tonight is just comes right out of that. But during design, we actually have a meeting scheduled next week with the city engineering department to kick off. And I think the city engineer is in the audience tonight. But we're going to meet with the city officially next week on this project. So this is something that can be discussed in design. If the city wants to see some alternative plans for bike and sidewalk, we can certainly explore it.
I'm just asking you.
But right now, what we're presenting tonight is basically what the Viva Comprehensive Plan calls for.
All right, very good, thank you.
Okay. What are the wishes of the commission?
I move that we approve item 6A with the attached comments.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? Motion carries. Thank you. The next item that we have is item 6B, preliminary consideration of Los Presidentes right-of-way dedication plat. The intent is city right-of-way, and the proposed action is approved subject to the following comments from planning. Fire needs a right-of-way, but and water utilities has a comment, and notice to developer.
Good evening, Ricardo Villarreal, Howland Engineering. As Eddie stated before, we are the second portion. I represent, on this plat, represent two landowners, Hilltop and JMLG Holdings, which it's the same intent as what the previous item was, is to dedicate the right-of-way so that Los Presidentes can be constructed. We agree with, there's one major comment that we had on there, which was note 3, I believe, note 3 or 4. We're going to change it to reflect it based off of what the ordinance, the approved ordinance, which states that the city, RMA, TxDOT, everybody involved is going to construct it. So we have no problem with changing that note. I do just want to reflect for the record, there is a note from fire. Captain Dominguez just stating that fire hydrants must be built with the roadway. These are, the reason the alignment is the way it is, a while back, a water line was constructed. So it does already exist along the alignment of Los Presidentes. And this is just showing where the fire hydrants are, which are within the 500-foot spacing here. Again, there's some subdivisions that are being built already. Those subdivisions have the 300-foot spacing that's required. But for this official roadway and the comment that was put on there, that fire hydrants must be installed in this right-of-way. This is showing, I took it from Eddie's, the package that Eddie has, and this shows the fire hydrants from Cuatro Vientos all the way to Concord Hills. And this can be provided later. I know it's just an official comment that the fire hydrants must be constructed within this plat, but these plats are just mainly right-of-way dedication plats. And all this would be, I guess, taken care of in the actual construction of the road. Now the road is, I'm pointing to Eddie here because they're the engineers for the actual roadway construction. This is going to be just roadway. The utilities is still the responsibility of the adjoining, the individual landowners that are adjoining at that portion of right-of-way.
Okay. Rick, I don't know, Rick or Kirby or somebody, what kind of timeframes are we looking at for the construction of this road?
Right now, we're in design, and we're proposing, we have a year to design the project. The only time element there on design is that we have to go through FEMA for a clomer.
Okay.
That's the only reason why we need 12 months. Other than that, we have a design in 6 months. But our goal is to expedite design work, try to be out to bid by next summer. And we're going to need about 12 to 14 months to construct the road. There's already discussion with the RMA and the city to expand this road project further to the east along Los Presidentes, so that you may be seeing something in the future involving an amendment to incorporate some more roadway as part of this project that may be bid as an additive alternate. But to answer your question directly, we're looking at about an 18 to 24-month window.
Now, let me ask you a question. The project is funded strictly for road construction right now, is that correct?
That's correct, but we do have an allowance for adjustment to fire hydrant and gate valves, because those fire hydrants were installed with a city project back in 2006. It was a NAT Bank funded project.
Oh, yeah.
And so now what we're going to be doing is adjusting those hydrants and the valves to tie with the finished grade.
Also, storm sewer is included.
Yes, we have storm sewer in our design packet for this
Okay.
project that will be dealing with all storm sewer from the developments on either side. So all that's already part of the design plan.
So any utilities, water and sewer, are not part of this project?
No, sir. The individual developer will be responsible for it.
As development occurs? Okay, well, given the timeline that you just gave me, in terms of 18 to 24 months, more or less, you guys are making an assumption that within this time frame, that particular development will be coming up to speed and they will be coming in and joining the project for utilities? Or are you just going to leave right away for the utilities to come in later? Is that pretty much it, right?
That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
What we just said in the second part.
Okay.
But we know enough information on these master plans to know where the utilities are going to be needed.
Okay.
So we'll be working very closely, Rick and I, to identify not just location, but elevation as well.
Sure.
And that's going to be the key.
Luckily, for this project, the water line's already existing along this corridor.
Yes.
So the water is pretty much taken care of. Any taps that would come in just like any other
Yeah,
project
yeah.
that comes in. The sewer, we did have Los Presidentes East Phase 1 come in maybe about 3 to 4 weeks ago. Construction is about to start on Los Presidentes East, which I wanted to put it up here because I know, let me see if I can put it on, just so I can point at it here. So this line here, Los Presidentes East is currently being constructed. Well, we're about to obtain the pre-construction meeting, so in about a week or two, you'll see actual boots on the ground. Within this development, there's an off-site sewer that comes up, comes in through the future right-of-way and connects to a sewer line there. Within that project, hopefully, this utilities issue will be taken care of.
Sure.
Once we get into the kind of meat and potatoes of the actual design, as we see fit, the developers would either put conduits under the road for future development. But like the chairman said, it's basically just for roadway and storm improvements.
Thank you. Commissioner?
It was,
Commissioner Tejas?
This goes around, I guess, there's a future park, like a long distance park that cuts through Concord Hills and then cuts under Cuatro Vientos. Are there going to be cutouts in the road for it?
This is further north, but I know,
But you still run into, there's a portion of it that runs, when it runs east-west, and the future land use, or I guess proposed, there's that big park area that cuts and starts from Haynes and then cuts across, I don't remember which
Yeah.
creek it is.
I wish I would have thought about that question. I would have brought that exhibit. There is basically a linear park system that is master planned.
that's check one.
It's actually south of this. It takes you from Independence Hills Regional Park and the Medida Pond that's already, and then it goes through the Summers Pond, which is owned by the city. You go under the Cuatro Vientos Bridge, and then you keep going east through the Galt property, and then you connect into Concord Hills, which is where we have Earthen Channel, and the city has a park system. Then you connect to Southern Development, which we're under construction on that right now. And then that connects to Las Misiones Park, which the city just recently completed. And then it connects into Lago del Valle, where we have our Lago del Valle Dam, and we have a park master plan that we're ready to start. So I think that's your question.
Yes.
This park system that I just described is further north of this arterial road, at least a good 2,000 to 3,000 feet.
But the thing is, though, any sort of cutouts or any sort of movement off of 359 requires us to go through TxDOT, and this is pretty much going to be the only major arterial under city control.
Yes, sir, that's
Where
correct.
we could get to and from, and if you pre-plan the idea that you're already gonna have to get cutouts to it, because it's probably
Oh,
gonna
I see
be-
what you're saying. I see it. Okay.
It would, I mean, that's going to be something that's gonna happen
Definitely, yeah,
sooner
we can
rather
definitely
than later.
explore that. We can definitely explore that because the vision's already been drawn up. Now it's just a matter of implementing it, and we can definitely coordinate that through TxDOT.
Thank you.
Because they're going to be a player in this project as it is, a funding player too. This arterial road's going to require an acceleration and deceleration lane to be constructed as part of it. So that's the TxDOT portion of that project.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you all very much. What are the wishes of the commission?
I move that we approve item 6B with the attached comments.
And the second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those against, motion carries. Thank you. The next item that we have is preliminary consideration of the replat of Lot 4 and eastern 23.15 feet of Lot 3, Block 680 Eastern Division into Lot 4A, Block 680 Eastern Division. The intent is residential. The proposed action is approved subject to the following comments from planning, from engineering, from water and utilities, and a notice to developer.
Good evening, I'm Daniel Gomez, the project engineer for this replat, and we concur with all of the comments.
Okay. Any questions for the engineer? No? If not, what are the wishes of the commission?
I move to approve agenda item 6C, subject to the following comments.
We have a motion.
Second.
And a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. The next item is, all right, I think we have several that are going to be,
Make a motion to hear items 7A and 8A together as one item.
okay?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Make a motion to approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next item that we have is item 9A. This is the issuance of certificate of no plat requirement for the replat of all of C-47 and the remaining south acres of C-46, Botina subdivision. The proposed action is approved. Is to issue, issue a certificate of no plat required, subject to the following comments from, all right. Anybody have any questions? If not, what are the wishes of the commission?
Make a motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
And a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, it's automatically known that the attached comments are included.
Yes.
Okay.
Next item is 9B, regarding the revision of the City of Laredo Land Development Code, Chapter 24, Article 4 and 5, the purpose of amending the parking regulations in historic districts. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, you do have a citizen's comment for this item.
Yes, sir. I'm aware.
Mr. Chairman, I would
Thank
ask that we save comments for after the presentation, as the
Yes, sir.
presentation may
That's
answer.
exactly what we're going to do.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to talk today about amending the Land Development Code section dealing with the historic district requirements. I'm going to review a little bit about historic districts so the public and yourselves all have the same understanding. We'll discuss the parking requirements that are currently existing with the historic districts and then the proposed changes. So the historic district is an overlay zone. It's a zone that lays on top of the underlying zone. And it's the underlying zone that gives most of the requirements. The overlay zone adds some additional requirements. This is found in section 24-66 of the Land Development Code. That's where the historic district overlay zone is located. And the purpose that you'll find in the code as it's written is to promote the preservation, restoration, and rehabilitation of historic structures. So it's not just about preserving, but also allowing for there to be new investment. And of course, sometimes that brings challenges because it's an existing neighborhood, existing development that's already there. We have 3 historic districts and 1 nationally recognized historic area. And those 3 historic districts, the one that are outlined in bold, are congruent with the historic district overlay zone. So that's where these requirements apply. So currently, the parking requirements for the historic districts are that they're based on the underlying zone and the type of land use. So if your underlying zone was B1 and you wanted to do an auto repair store, if it was permitted, that's where you would get your parking requirements. So the parking requirements don't come from the historic district overlay, they come from the underlying zone and the requirements there. However, currently, there is an allowance in the historic district building official to waive 25% of the parking requirement if he deems it appropriate to the preservation of and the investment in the historic structure. Parking codes can be found in section 24-78 of the Land Development Code. And in general, most of the parking requirements are the same as the general retail requirement, and that is 1 parking stall per 200 square feet, up to 5,000 square feet. Over that, it's 1 per 250. Now, there's a variation of that depending on the use, but for many of the uses, it's 1 per 200. So, well, I'll share an example later so we're clear with what that means. Now, what we're proposing is for section 24.66.6, which this is for the historic district. This is the exception that's already there for the historic district. We're proposing to amend that from 25% to up to 50% of the parking may be waived. So it's up to, doesn't mean it will be 50%, but it can be up to 50%. For those cases which involve rehabilitation, restoration, or preservation of historic, in the historic district. So that's the first proposal. The second proposal, there's a lot of text here. Let me explain. If you want to read it, we can. The second is that there, in the parking section, which is not the historic district section Land Development Code, but the parking requirements section Land Development Code, there's a clause already there for exceptions for central business districts, zones, and the arts and entertainment district. We're proposing to add a 3rd section or a 3rd exemption for historic districts. And what this exemption will allow is for us to count the on-street parking. Right now, for whatever parking requirements you have, you're only allowed to count parking that is off the street in a parking lot. We're proposing to count this for the historic district to be able to count the parking off the street. What's our justification? Our justification is that these historic structures and oftentimes the lots, well, any changes right now, the way that the city's been interpreting the historic district requirements, any changes you make to the lot require them to go to the historic board. And because we do want to preserve the existing character, we don't want to just pave everything for parking lots, we do want to encourage the parking that's on the street. And we have a lot of parking downtown. We have a grid system, and we have parking, we have meters, which we want people to use, so why not count them? So that's what we're writing in, is for us to count them. Now, we didn't specify exact specifications, and that's to give us some flexibility, because not all parking is the same. We phrased it as legal and on-street parking. We didn't stipulate how wide to have to count, because sometimes there's angled parking that can be allowed, sometimes it's parallel. We don't want to hamper us in so tightly, but it'll be intuitive. It's the amount of legal parking, the maximum amount of cars that can be legally parked that are abutting the property. Let's talk about an example. So this whole question rose because of a previous item that you heard where an applicant wanted to go to a zone change, a different zone that didn't require parking, because they were going to have constraints with parking on the property that they were making an investment. And they only have 6 parking spots on their lot. And they have about 4,000 square feet. So if they were to use the whole building, which they want to use the whole building, because of the parking requirements, they'd have to have 20 parking stalls for 4,000 square feet. As you can see, they only have 6. And so what we would do with the way that we're proposing to change is that, first of all, the building official could waive 50%. Seeing that they're trying to preserve that historic structure and that it falls under that requirement. And so now it would just be 10. And with the additional change that we're proposing, they'd have the 6 that are off-street, and then they'd only need 4 off-street. And they'd be able to make that because this lot, the right-of-way that is directly adjacent to this lot, would allow them to have more than 4. If you counted all those that could be legally parked, there would be 6. So they would have 12, and they'd only need 10. And so they could get 6 from the lot that they're proposing to build, and 4 that are counted on the street as well. We met with the members of the neighborhood to speak to them about it and get their input, and we did not hear any objections. They might share some tonight, but at that meeting when we discussed it, there weren't any major issues with these proposals that we submitted and or that we presented. And we also met with the applicant of this proposal, and they as well thought that that would be an agreeable solution. Do you have any questions, anything I can answer for you about this? Yes.
So by doing this in lieu of the zone change, we would be able to do an SUP and they would be able to get approved for the special use permit based on this new.
So the SUP, they'd have to come in
Right.
for their ability to have a liquor license where they could sell beer and wine. So that's separate from this. Before, when we went to the city council meeting, that was proposed as an alternative. That, hey, well, if you've got parking issues, just use an SUP and you can waive the parking. That's not how special use permits work. We can't go lower than the requirement with an SUP. We could go higher. You could ask them to have more parking, but you can't waive parking through a special use permit. So that wasn't going to work as an option for the parking issue here. So that's why we had to look for an alternative, which is why we're changing the historic district. But they will have to go for an SUP if they want to have a beer and wine license.
That's the intent.
Now, this property is right across the street from a law office, isn't it?
So
Right
this
across
is
the
looking
street on
west.
Davis?
This is looking west, yes, and on Davis there, or Victoria, I believe, directly to the west is an office, and also an office to,
Next door as well, where Congressman Cuellar has his office. There are 2 law offices across the street on Davis.
yes, there are offices, multifamily, and adjacent to these.
But what stops this business from leasing? And we've never had a problem with other people leasing other parking spots to get them under or over the threshold for the parking spaces. So why are we changing the rules for one specific, like we're changing a whole ordinance for one specific property?
It's one property now, but there are other properties that we're currently working with another applicant who's having the same issue, and they wanted to do a zone change. And so we were telling them, don't go forward with that zone change because it doesn't look like that's a preferred option for the council or the neighborhood. So the council members asked us to find an alternative solution, and this is what we're proposing. Now, to have parking agreements, we'd have to look at the specifics of the code, but the problem with those parking agreements is that sometimes they can be very easy to get, just so you can get passed through, so you can get your a business license, but then the parking requirement, they have to pay for that typically, so then they just let it lapse, and now you're stuck with a parking issue. So we don't want people to be non-compliant with the rule, and often those parking agreements aren't the best way to handle it, so.
Yes, Commissioner. Mr. Schneidman, so the HRO to HCBD, I know that it passed. I wasn't here for that meeting, I apologize, but the recommendation was to approve by this commission?
Yes, Planning Commission sent a positive recommendation.
As was your all's recommendation? Was that Planning Department's recommendation?
Originally, yes.
Okay. So then when it got to city.
An alternative solution, they did not want to immediately look at this.
Okay, so then, are we going to relook at the zone change or SUP again?
Those are unrelated to, the SUP is unrelated to the parking. That city council had brought that up as an idea of where we could, or at the city council meeting, it was brought up that we could use a special use permit, an SUP, as a way to solve the parking issue, but we can't. We can't reduce parking requirements with a special use permit. We can only increase them.
Okay,
Or
but
leave them
then-
the same.
okay,
So
so
that's
that-
not an option. And the rezoning it to central business district also did not look like an option. The neighborhood wasn't. Now, the council did not take a vote on that, but Councilmember Bali kind of directed staff, and based on the comments that were coming from the neighborhood, that did not look like a likely outcome. Of course,
No,
council did not vote on it.
yes, I understand that, and I personally would have supported it. I would have gone with the SUP myself. But either of these is, regardless of HRO or HCBD, it's still, the parking issue still exists. The parking issue still exists.
I mean,
Regardless
if
of,
we do not adopt these,
no, if it's current zoning or if it's changed CBD, it doesn't impact what we're talking about.
could you elaborate the question?
It's only about the type of business, whether it's HRO or CBD, the zone change, it doesn't impact what we're talking about.
Well, we're not requesting a zone change
I
today.
understand that. I'm looking ahead. So it's not, it has nothing to do with this, with the zone change itself.
What has nothing to do with this?
Changing this requirement down from 25 to 50. It's for the entire historic area.
It would affect the.
That's what I'm saying. It's not necessarily for CBD, or it's for the whole downtown area, or it's for the
It's not for
historic.
this property alone. It is for the entire historic district. That's correct. Or any historic district.
Okay. And is that a concern for us, Mr. Chairman, if it goes district-wide?
I don't think so.
All right.
Yes, he's trying to find a solution that is amicable for everybody using street parking. Really, that's really what it is, as opposed to not having adequate space. And the older parts of town that are being converted to some kind of a use are basically residential lots from the past. And you're not going to be able to accommodate a lot of parking on them. So
Yes.
this is an option where you can use a property for some kind of venue and meet the parking requirement using on-street parking.
Yes, and to your point, if what we're doing is trying to preserve the character
Yeah.
of the buildings and the lots, then this encourages less paving of open space and allowing us to use the parking that's there. And look, if we got a use that came in and was going to be very high parking, that's something where the building official would have to very much consider, well, you're a use that really will have a lot of vehicles, and it's going to have an impact to the neighborhood. Maybe we're not interested in reducing that requirement, and maybe it's not a good location. Maybe you should locate your business not in the historic district because we can't make it work. But what we want to do is not exclude opportunities that will not have a significant impact and will use the off-street parking that's located right there because we want them to use it.
Yes,
So we're
understood.
just counting it.
All right, thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Please refresh my memory, but the HRO, do they allow beer and wine in that zoning to be sold?
There are uses that would allow them with a special use permit. So the
So they need
RO,
to get the special use permit, okay.
they would, yes.
But by changing it to an HCBD, then they don't need the special use permit, right?
No, they would still need it.
Sure.
They would
That was a
still need it?
confusion at the city council meeting,
Okay.
that they would need, or that if it was changed to CBD, now they could have a bar. And the H is just an overlay. And with that
What is the purpose then
overlay,
of rezoning, going back to the original meeting?
it was about parking. The original was about parking. Because of the historic overlay, no matter what the underlying zone is, you'd have to get an SUP if you were going to sell liquor. And also, that property in particular was located within 300 feet of a church, so it would not have been permitted to have a bar at that location. So because of the historic district overlay, no matter what the underlying zone is, CBD, RO, whatever, they'd have to get an SUP. It'd have to go through a process of you saying yes or no.
I guess, can we specify, we're not talking about a bar here, we're talking about a restaurant that may or may not serve beer and wine, which are two different standards for TABC, right?
That's correct. That's yet to be determined. That has nothing to do with what's proposed tonight. This is just about parking. But yes,
No, but
there is a
there's a
distinction.
huge difference
There are
because.
30 different licenses with am I right, 30 with the TABC?
No, but it's clear what the
Can sell
intent
varying
is.
degrees.
It's clear what the intent is.
Yeah, the intent for them was not a bar.
So the stuff calling the bar.
And with the and I don't want to talk too much about that because I don't want to,
Different issues.
yeah, it's a separate
different
issue.
issues.
And an SUP will be
Yeah,
brought before
it's
planning
just
commission.
different issues here.
I thought
Any
they
other
were
questions?
entwined.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I do have one person who signed up, Margarita Govea and Mr. Jose Cantu.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Margarita Govea,
Good evening, Jose Cantu.
and we are the owners of the Phoenix Bookstore, which is the property that you see there. So we did sign up for comments simply because we want to portray a message from us, the owners and the investors of this property, that we are really thankful for everything that the city of Laredo is doing to make sure to push us into completing our project and to be able to open our doors to our future business. We do want to see it succeed. And we are trying to meet in the middle with the neighborhood and with the city, so that we can ensure that both, all angles from every perspective is satisfied, because we do want our business to thrive. And I noticed that you did have a lot of questions pertaining to our intent of what we are going to, like our business plan and what we want to present to the city. Even though this meeting is only pertaining to the parking, we do want to say that our business, our primary use of our business is a bookstore, legitimate bookstore. We already purchased over 26,000 books that we have in inventory and ready to stock in our shelves so that we can offer to the citizens of Laredo. And within our store, within our building, we do have plans to open a small coffee shop that in the future, after our doors open, we will be applying for a special use permit to only offer the sale of beer and wine and nothing other than that, just beer and wine. And we do expect our patrons to purchase it as just like a small little add-on to their order whenever they come in and they want to lounge and read a book, or whenever we have some sort of entertainment in the establishment, like painting with wine events, when it's going to be consumed at a moderate level, nothing to exceed that. Nothing to exceed that, like a bar type of setting that you typically see along Iturbide Street. That is not our intent. That is not the business plan that we are planning. That is not the type of customers that we want to attract. We want only, moderate drinking, just to be able to
I think we
lounge.
get your ideas.
Yes.
All right, any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments. All right, what are the wishes of the commission?
Move that we support staff recommendation and send a positive recommendation to City Council.
Second.
And a second. Discussion. I have a question or discussion. Seeing as how we're changing an ordinance, shouldn't this be a public hearing?
The city council meeting is the public hearing that will be noticed.
But normally when you do change an ordinance, you have to have a public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission,
We checked,
before you make that recommendation to City Council.
last time we checked on this with council, only one of these meetings, the planning commission or the city council for that public hearing needs to be noticed for the 16 days. So this had the noticing requirements that are normal, and that suffices for this meeting, for this recommendation. For the actual public hearing that will take place at city council, that we've already noticed it so that it could meet the 16-day requirement. So last time we checked with legal, only one of the meetings between the planning commission and city council need to be noticed as a public hearing. So we're meeting that requirement.
Okay, thank you. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those against? Motion carries, thank you. The next item we have is presentation of the recoding of Laredo.
I would ask that, once again, we table this for another meeting when we can have more of the quorum, more of the commission here, and a little more time that y'all aren't looking at your watch waiting for me to finish, so. Now, it's fine that we're waiting a little longer because this is a process that overall will take 18 months. We're several months into that already. So we've got a little over a year, still a year and a few months where we're still working on this. We've gotten a lot of input so far. We're going to continue to get more input. We're having public meetings this winter and spring, and we're going to come back to the stakeholders again, the industry professionals, and get additional input. We're going to be bringing it to the commission and to council multiple times. So if you're worried that we're delaying it, don't worry. This is a long process, and I want to have a meeting where we can take our time and really get your input, because that's what we want to do. So.
Is there a way we can ask you to push either the public information office to do a better job of giving or reaching out, whether it be through social media or through non-traditional media forms, of informing the general public of these meetings, because the only people that know about these meetings are the people that are actually trying to look for them. So it would be nice, if people don't show up, they don't show up, but more attempts at outreach through traditional, through the office of the city government that does.
That is very good input, and we've received it from a few commissioners, and it's not the fault of the Public Information Office. That was our intent with the meetings we've had first, is that they're smaller stakeholder meetings where we're sending specific invites. Now, we are going to have public meetings that are going to be open to the public, widely open. Those ones we will way push out. Now, these stakeholder meetings, maybe we could do we could throw a wider net, or we can make people know about it multiple times. We did as part of the Recode Laredo presentation, I wanted to show you I have a printout that I will bring to show you what we're doing to reach out to the various groups, all the groups we invited. We sent multiple emails, we did multiple calls, we confirmed for those that would come the day of, and we reached out to 30, 40 organizations between the meetings that we've already had. Those were meant to be smaller meetings, because if you get too big a meeting, you can't have so we've had over a dozen of these smaller meetings where we can have a couple dozen meetings.
I guess my disagreement with that is that when you only talk to the usual suspects, it turns into an echo chamber where you hear what you want to hear, and they don't necessarily get in touch with regular citizens who may have a completely different idea, and then you just run into groupthink that it's the same stuff.
Fair criticism. We're not inviting only a certain group of people. We really did as wide as we could to different organizations, industry professionals, developers, architects, engineers, everybody to hit that. We talked to the Laredo home builders, developers that are active, trying to get all the people that really are involved with the code. And we're also going to be having public meetings where we will get everybody out and get all their input. In addition to that, we're doing 2 surveys, Spanish and English, that we'll be putting out over the next year to gather input. So we're trying as best as we can, but I'm taking your input. Yes, we're going to do a better job we're going to make sure that we get as much input as possible from everybody in the city. Those that agree with us, those that don't. So your point is duly noted. I'm just trying to communicate that it was our intent to keep these stakeholder meetings by invitation for those that deal with the code regularly, and then those that indirectly deal with it, those are the focus.
Can we be involved in those? Because we deal with the codes regularly.
Yes, well,
There
was the challenge of not wanting to form quorum, but
we could fix that.
Commissioner Beckelheimer pointed out that, what we could have done is worked with Chairman
and the developers, engineers,
and assigned certain people to go.
The thing is that just because all 9 of us are at one place at one time, if we're watching a baseball game, it doesn't make it an open meetings violation. It's only when we're speaking about an official item that is before the board.
Right.
And so we can all be at the Recode Laredo meetings without.
Actually, no, it's a little wider than that, as far as the Open Meetings Act. If a public official, such as me, somebody that works for the city, is communicating information about the city, then if you form quorum at that meeting, you're breaking your open meetings. Even if it's not something that would normally be brought to you, if it's information being communicated by a city official at a city function, then all of a sudden you do need to notice it if you form quorum. So we were trying to be a little careful about that, knowing that we were coming to you multiple times. Of course, you didn't know that yet, because we hadn't announced that I would be coming here to give you the same Recode Laredo presentation we've been giving.
But I think if all 9 of us however we are there, that's a good problem to have. There'll be more involvement from the commission, right? We're lucky we get 2 people.
The only thing you'd have to do there, Kirby, is post it.
Speak with you, and you can assign some people.
Either that, or you could post a meeting, a workshop of the planning commission, and that way you're covered under the open records.
I have a quick question, Commissioner Edmund. So these stakeholder meetings, I'll call them that, they're distributed throughout the city?
No.
Well, that would be a thing to do, Mr. Edmund. You could target 2 or 3 locations, or 2 locations, I'm making this up, 2 locations per district. Here's your Recode Laredo stakeholders meeting, come speak up here, and then each commissioner can attend theirs if they want to, that pertains to their.
So we're having multiple rounds of stakeholder meetings. Let me break this down. We have stakeholder meetings for industry professionals. focus groups for those that are indirectly related with the code, like organizations, city departments, and then public meetings. So for the stakeholder and focus group meetings, we're having multiple rounds of those. This first round we did downtown. For the other rounds, we're going to do at other locations.
But I'm
we
suggesting
are
that if
going.
you target into the districts and indicate for District 5, District 6, District 1,
And then for the
2,
public meetings, we're doing just that.
Right.
We're going to have a public meeting in each of the districts, in the district, at a location in the district, to reach out to each of them.
No, that's a good idea.
So
Very
we're,
good.
I think we're on the same page. We want to get as much input as possible from everybody in the city that wants to give us input on this. So we're not in any way trying to filter this down. We're actually working very hard to get a lot of input. And
So these, all these stakeholder meetings are hosted at the same location?
for this first round, they
Downtown?
were, but not, we're having additional rounds of stakeholders.
Because you mentioned the Builder Association, right? And there are stakeholders that would be at these meetings also?
We sent an invitation out to the, or we've been working with the LBA, because
Because they have a board meeting where you could probably host some of these meetings. Yeah, instead of just keeping it to one part of town, it's really.
No, but they're going to move around the
Not
whole
sure.
city on the
Yeah.
next round.
Yeah.
That's what he's saying,
I mean,
which
yeah.
is correct.
we've been speaking with the LBA, and I'm not sure they would want to take an hour of their whole meeting devoted to us, but we spoke with them to send representatives to our stakeholder meeting so that they participated, and they did. So we've been working with them to make sure they have input and they're a part of the.
Kirby, are you having a lot of, or are you inviting contractors, building contractors? Because the building contractors are going to be impacted by recoding Laredo. They're the ones that have to look at the codes.
We've invited builders. I'm sure builders started out as contractors, so we haven't dipped down into, the guys that are working on it day to day.
Okay.
But we will be sending out a survey that's English, Spanish.
Well, I think
so-
what we can do there, and I'm just going to give you a suggestion, me, is there's different associations that I think we should have meetings with, say, the plumbers, your electricians, your mechanical people, just to get their input too on the enforcement and the type of coding that's going on out there and what they feel.
They pull permits?
Okay, they pull permits, exactly.
I would agree. And we're definitely looking not just at the code, but we're looking at the process. Although I would say
Yes.
most of their input and most of their complaints would be about the actual building code, which we're not proposing to vary from the IBC, their National Building Code. If we sat down with some
Well, we can't,
contractors
all
and
right.
said, what's your
no,
challenge?
I think what we need to do is just get their input. It may be that we cannot do anything about the codes that are adopted, okay? But there might be a process in how we're recoding Laredo that can be impacted, that these people, because they work in the industry day in and day out, may have some good ideas as to what would be a good methodology to use that would make it easy for everybody to work.
That's good input, and we'll make an effort to reach out to them. Thank you.
All right, any other questions for,
No, sir.
thank you very much.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Motion, second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all very much.
What a fine motion to make.
I was waiting for his comment.
Right.